Bill, talk a little bit more about the challenges that the customers are having in managing the supply base.
Well, we're flipping the coin here now, looking at the customer side of the equation, and I think when you look at the OEM side, it's a little easier. One, they've had pretty strong processes in place for a lot of years, and their supply base tends to be the larger tier one suppliers, which are publicly held, a lot of visibility, the relationships tend to be better, and so they've got the visibility. I think where the difficulty comes is for the tier ones, where their supply base is privately held, information's not known, and so they've got the difficulty of trying to get that data from that supply base. And add to that, which I think is kind of the unknown 800-pound gorilla, is the lack of resources within the tier ones. As volume came back up, resources weren't added. So if you look around the tier ones today, and it applies to the OEMs, it applies to the suppliers, but in this case, you look at the tier ones, is they lack resources to basically throw at the problem. And they understand the problem, but you got executives today that are, instead of doing one job, are doing two, sometimes three jobs. And I'll give you an example, is one of the tier ones came to us and said, we've got two suppliers that we see them trending negatively. They're not in trouble, but we want to be proactive. We want you to go in and help them. And I said, okay, no problem, we're here. And he says, well, I've got to leave for Asia, and I'm going to be in Asia for 2 weeks, but when I get back, I'm going to kick you off. Great. 2 weeks comes, and guy gets back, and I said, all right, where are we? And he said, well, under the New World Order since 2009, I've got to get another sign off from the finance side of the house before I can engage you. Oh, by the way, that guy's in Europe. He'll be back in 2 weeks, and when we get back, we'll get it all signed up. All right? Comes, sure enough, the finance guy gets back, the purchasing guy's now in India. So it takes them 2 months to get back. By that time, both suppliers crashed, and we were in a distressed situation instead of a proactive situation. And that's not uncommon. I can tell you, and we do a lot of work for many of the tier ones, that is not an uncommon problem that sits out there today. It's not that they haven't prioritized what they've got to get after, it's just that list is a mile long. And they're being pulled in so many different directions, especially since we're global, that you got people running around the world trying to get stuff done. And it is a big problem that I see as one of the largest challenges we have in the stability of the supply base, especially that privately held, because getting that data and getting the information is difficult. And I think that's one that we've got to overcome here quickly, and it's tough because it affects the bottom line. Paul W., you talked about stock prices for GM and for Ford. It affects the tier ones the same way. So everybody's resistant to add fixed cost in today's environment because everybody's a little sensitive to story sounds good, everything looks good, but boy, there's a whole lot of things out there that can screw that up.
Well, from the OEMs to the tier threes, it's an issue, it's a difficulty. The problem's impacting the entire supply base.
Absolutely.